What's up, ETHDenver? Okay, that's enough of that. I'm going to be your MC for the next few hours. I'm Hudson, and I'm very happy to introduce the awesome presenters from Radical Funding with rDAI, Patrick and Victor.
Hello, hello. All right. Hi, Denver. Who's excited to be here today? All right. Me too. Okay, who's thinking about building something while they're here? Anybody? Anybody thinking about building on DeFi, decentralized finance products? All right. So what we're here to talk about is radical funding with rDAI. And we're going to talk about what rDAI is in a second, how it works, and why people should build on it. But what I want to talk about initially is the radical funding part. What if I told you you could build a dApp that was able to fund itself without advertising, without taking fees from users out of pocket, and without selling user data? Would that be appealing? Would that be radical? I think so. And that's what's possible with rDAI. We're going to show you how builders and people at home, even if you're watching on the live stream, if you're not even here at ETHDenver, can use rDAI as a permissionless way to find revenue streams natively that are not exploitive or extractive of your users and using only permissionless protocols from decentralized finance. So we're really excited to talk to you about this today. But the first thing I want to do is point to our Discord. And if you're here in the room, I strongly suggest you go ahead and scan this QR code. It only takes a second. That joins our Discord. This is where you get information about rDAI. If you have projects you want to work on, this is where we can talk to you about that. If you're home at the live stream, I think this will probably work. Just zoom in and use the QR code. So this is where basically all the nucleus of rDAI development is happening. We'll talk about some of those developments in a second. So very briefly, how do we get to rDAI? What are the basic concepts of what this protocol is? So if you think about what lending pools are, right? If you're using DAI in Compound and you start out with 100 DAI, and let's say that the dynamic APR for a year was 8.81%, which it was a little while ago. It's come down a little bit. After a year, if you use Compound, you would have the equivalent of 108.81 DAI. Now, this is a really cool thing for generating returns. But what we have with rDAI is this. You have the ability to program that interest. So it doesn't just natively come back to you. You can say, I want to keep my principal and redirect the interest to someone. So here, you have 100 DAI at the beginning of the year, and a year goes by, and 8.81 DAI are generated from the lending pool, and they go to UNICEF. They stream to UNICEF the entire year, and you decide to do that. And you can change this if you want, but this could be one strategy. You could also send some of it to UNICEF and keep some of it. You could split it yourself. rDAI is programmable, and you can have up to 50 different recipients of it. It's however you want to do it. You remain in control of both your original DAI that stays in your wallet, that never leaves anywhere. It's not locked. It's not at risk. And you have the ability to always change who the recipients are. And the way that it basically works is by separating the principal that you start out with and then the interest. And you say, here's where I want the interest to go. So the way it does this is through a concept called a hat. And a hat is simply the instructions about what to do with the interest. They have two pieces to a hat. It's who are the list of recipients of interest, and this can include your own address, or it can include just one address like UNICEF, or it can include 50 addresses. And then it says how much should each one of these recipients get. And so you have to have a list of recipients and a list of proportions. There is a default setting if you don't set any of this, which simply says all the money comes back to me, as if I were just in Compound in the first place. It's called a self hat, and that's kind of the default condition. If you do nothing in rDAI, you're essentially using Compound. And I should also point out that Compound is a current allocation strategy. It's not baked into the rDAI protocol. It could be a different lending pool, but for the time being, it's Compound. So each hat, we kind of went over what the hats were. Maybe the next one. So a quick example of this might be, let's imagine Charlie. Charlie has 100 DAI. And he decides to mint rDAI, mint 100 rDAI. So rDAI and DAI are 1-to-1 always. And he says, this is the hat that he makes. I want Alice and Bob, A and B, to be my recipients of my interest, and the proportions that go to each are 90 to the first one in the list and 10 to the second. 90%, 10%. So after a year, like let's assume that there was a 10% interest over a year, just to make the numbers easy. So if 10% interest was gained, you've got 10 DAI that are added to the 100 that started the year off. And so the balances at the end of the year are Alice has 9, Bob has 1, and Charlie, who started with 100, still has 100. That's basically how it works. So, once more, please join the rDAI Discord. I'm going to pass it over to Patrick here. He's going to show you how to actually work with rDAI, how to wire this up. I just wanted to go over some of these initial basic concepts, and now I'll turn it over to Patrick.
Hey guys. All right. So, we are going to go through how you would use rDAI in your dApp, and we're going to start with the example of one dApp that's already out there called rTrees. So, this is essentially taking the interest from the DAI and sending it to a charity that's going to donate, that's going to plant trees with the interest. And so I want to point out here that there is no code that went into this except for the front end. This is only a front end plus a hat in rDAI. So what we're going to do now is we are going to create a hat using the ETH build tool. And so this is the final product that we're going to get. And there's a link to this in the Discord if you want to download and play around with this. But I'm going to stand now, and we're going to kind of create this. So the first thing, this is a little intro to ETH build as well that you're getting here. We're going to create our provider key so that we can connect to Infura. We're going to paste that there. And then we are going to create a contract object. And this is going to be our rToken contract, and that needs a couple of things. That needs the address, that needs the blockchain, which is our Infura key, that's our connection. And for the address, you're going to go to the repo, right, for rToken. All the documentation is there, and you'll go down to the deployed contract section. And you can see that we have Kovan, we have mainnet, Rinkeby has been deprecated. And then we're going to copy the address for the rDAI proxy. We are going to paste that in. And then if you clone the repo, you can run truffle, compile and get the ABI, of course. But I already have that over here from my little cheat sheet. So I'm going to paste that in. All right, now let's zoom in. We got this contract object. This is all the functions on the rDAI contract, right? The ones we're going to talk about today are change hat. We're going to do some hat stuff. Let's look at total supply right now, just to as a sanity check. Okay, so what we're doing essentially is we're calling total supply. It's going to Infura. It's fetching the data, and it's coming back with nothing. Let me try this one more time. Alrighty. Okay, so we get that, and that is in Way. So if we convert from Way, then we can see that there are 533 rDAI minted on the Kovan contract. All right, cool. So now let's hook up our MetaMask. Let's see what our balance of rDAI is. So that is the address that we have right now, and this is like the MetaMask in the browser. It's very cool. Yeah, shout out to Austin Griffith for making this amazing tool. Okay, let's get balance of, check some stuff about my wallet. The address that we're going to look for is our wallet address, and we're going to create a button, and we're going to create a timer that polls. So this gets clicked a lot. This button gets clicked a lot, every 3 seconds. All right, the output from that is this big, large number. Again, this is in Way, so we are going to do some conversion. And we see that my balance is 117 rDAI. I have 117 rDAI on Kovan. What am I going to do with it, right? Where's the interest for that going? Let's check that out. So we are going to get hat by address. And we're going to pass that same address as the owner. And we are going to call it. And we're going to see the output. We get this nice object. And if we scroll down here, we can see the properties are labeled. The hat ID is 71. So my hat on my wallet is hat 71. And a hat is unique. There's each hat has one set of recipients and one set of proportions, like Victor was talking about, and that never changes. So if you want to make a new hat for your dApp, if you want to make the rTrees hat is 11, right? So like anybody sets their hat to 11, now they're basically donating to rTrees. For your dApp, maybe you make hat 67 is your hat. And so that's the hat you would use in your dApp. All right, so let's create a hat. So I am going to create some text inputs. And who do we want the recipients to be, right? Well, let's make a new account right now. And we are going to generate that within ETHBuild using some very not secure random private key generation. Okay, I just made a brand new account, never been used before. And we are going to pass that in an array here with one recipient. So we're only going to have one recipient. So that means all of the interest has to go to that one recipient. So when we make our array of proportions, we just pass any number here, right? It could be 50, right? Because it's a ratio here. But we'll just do 1. And then there is another input on create hat, and that is do hat change. And we are going to set that to true. And what that does is, at the same time that I create a new hat, I also change my own hat. But you might not need this functionality. All right, and we are going to have to parse all of this in order to generate format this properly so that the create hat function can generate the proper data for our transaction. Oh, come on. Okay, so now we see the output. This is our, it's so small. All right, this is our transactional data. You can see we have a function selector, and we got some nice juicy stuff down there. We got our address that is our recipient there. Okay, so now we have the data for our transaction, and we know where we're going to send it. That's our contract. So let's create. We're going to bring our MetaMask down because we want to use it down here. Okay, so we're going to pass the data into there, and we're going to grab the address of the contract wizard way back where we started, way over there. And let's create a new hat. Okay. And remember, our hat ID was 71. Oh, there it goes. Now it's 72. So we created a new hat. We changed my wallet, which you might not need to do. But we created a new hat. It has the recipients 0xBF00, right? This is a brand new account we just created right here. And the proportions are this very large number, which is the maximum integer in a UN32. You don't have to worry about that. Proportions are just like 1 to 1, like 50 to 50, or 90 to 10. Okay, so that's all you need to make an entire dApp. Is you need to create a hat and allow your users to mint with selected hat or change hat or do something like that. Okay, that's pretty much it. The other materials and resources you have available are the API, which is very limited at the moment. There's two calls, but it's api.rdai.money. Of course, the repo. We have an explorer, so if you do launch your dApp on mainnet, you can kind of see where the interest is flowing. And if we zoom in here, these are all the rTrees people. So everybody in this bubble here, all those individual blue dots, are people with hat 11, which is the hat of rTrees. And you can see that hat 11 has 2 recipients. One on the left is the dApp wallet, which is, or not the dApp wallet, is the donation fund, and the one on the right is the developer fund. So that's to support the project to continue going. So yeah, if you launch something or you play around on mainnet, you should be able to see it show up here. This is like another dApp over here. This is actually the rDAI official dApp. What else? Yeah, this is essentially like if you have funds coming into your dApp and you want them to not just sit there and not do anything, you can potentially convert them to rDAI and have the hat set to where you want the interest to go. And yeah, we're going to be back there after this, so you can come ask us questions. And of course, I'll put up the Discord slide and you can join that. That's it.